Good evening, everybody. It is once again time for the Warren Files. That must mean it's Wednesday. Um, Tonight's show it's a good topic because we always talk about paranormal stories and ghosts and things like that. So um, a lot of people have okay. First of all, I got to start it this way. I really had a great idea for an intro, Chris, that I was going to do, but I didn't think it would. In fact, I know it would not pass standards and practices in HR. They both ruled no. They said I could not put a witch in the background and put a microphone in front of her face and pretend it was me. So,
well, we actually have some witches on the show, and they don't exactly live up to the stereotype.
Right, and that's tonight's topic is, a lot of people have a notions that witches are evil and they're into black magic and everything is dark and curses and this and that and the other thing. So I think it's a really good idea. Stephanie, I think you were the one that mentioned it last week that we should have a show to where you guys can really talk about what really happens and put some of this stuff to bed because y'all look normal to me. So I don't I'm not seeing any green faces like the Wizard of Oz or I don't think you're gonna put a curse on me. I don't. Maybe I'm not. So.
I really feel like our witches play a big part in the foundation. They help with protection for our clients. They really are knowledgeable, and I think that people should know that it's not a negative thing. Witchcraft is not a negative thing unless they make it a negative thing.
Right. So I guess I'll start with that question. Then I'll probably just step back and really monitor the comments and people. If you have questions, post them in the comments, and we will get to them. But that's so. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute because I was raised Christian, went to Christian school, went to church all my life, and I truly thought witches were all bad and evil. So what would you say to somebody like how I used to think?
So for me personally, with the way that people view witches and witchcraft, a lot of it comes from what we see on TV and movies and things like that. And that's really kind of made that foundation, which could be probably the furthest from the truth. When people think of magic, they're thinking of black magic, white magic, gray magic. And for me, at least, there is no necessarily black or white. Everything is based on intent. If you put good intentions into the universe, you get good intentions tenfold back. Negative, same way. And for when you're doing magic and you're casting any kind of ritual, spell, protection, whatever, your intent should be that positivity, protection, things like that. And that is what you're putting out and that you're calling on for assistance from whoever you might be calling to, whether it be elementals, the watchtowers, whatever. So it really comes down to what it is that you're wanting and what you're trying to achieve. And then that influences what you end up getting in return.
I want to just say a couple of quick things. I'm by no means an expert, especially in European-derived witchcraft, which is basically what we're talking about with these ladies. Here in South America, it's a whole nother thing. There's also red magic and green magic, and the schools of witchcraft go back tens of thousands of years. And I've said this on several shows. Witchcraft is, and my grandparents actually said something similar. It is the first religion. It is the one from which the roots of religion have grown. It's all about learning the power of nature, learning the power of intention, learning how to use what you have in your environment to help others, whether it be as a ritual medicine or actual medicine or what have you. Natalie is going what she's describing for me being the more scientifically based human. I see this as quantum physics at work. That we can shape our environment through ritual and intention, but we really do have to be quite focused to do that, and it's not something you're going to do overnight. You know, I just read a chapter of The Demonologist again for our Patreon account, and it was both chapters 6 and 7 talk about this one fellow who uses a conjuring mirror. Now, this is not witchcraft, but he was using black magic, and it talks about the steps he had to go through and how long it took him to actually get this to work. So my only reason for using that here is to talk about the fact that it is an example of how ritual and intention, when it's truly focused, can do amazing things. The same thing is true with Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhists, for instance, in particular. They can manipulate their environment. They can make people see things that are not there. They can make things physically manifest. So, which is paganism, Wicca. There's so much there, and I mean, even in Africa, you've got animism, which is basically the same idea, at the very least. The idea that everything has power and that you can find power in nature. And right about there, I think I should stop.
I'm going to ask one quick question, though, relating to your grandparents, since this is the Warren Foundation. With their Catholic background and stuff like that, were they opposed to witchcraft, or were they pretty open-minded to it for, being that they were Catholic?
Well, here's the thing. People want to see my grandparents and see them in a video. And by the way, I wanted to make a specific point this evening of telling you how much I love that intro. It is so nice.
Yes.
Grandparents popping up like that.
With headphones on, man, that thing sounds killer.
It's just fantastic. Thank you. In the 60s, 70s, even the early 80s, my grandfather confused witchcraft with Satanism. But even in the late 70s, when they were writing The Demonologist with Gerald Brittle, my grandmother does make it clear that it's not the same thing. So she had already gotten a handle on that. And the fact that witchcraft can be used for both good or evil, it's just like any religion in the world can be used for good or evil. My grandparents never discriminated against a religion. They worked with all religions as long as they were able to help their client. So we do the same.
Yeah, cool.
I was going to say, Jeff, I was raised Catholic, so I went to Sunday school and I
So
went
you
to
were
mass
probably
on
told-
Sunday. And
You were probably told the same stuff that I was.
actually, I don't really remember the church talking about witchcraft. This was obviously back in England in the 80s, I guess, during my childhood, dating myself there. I don't remember the church ever really talking about witchcraft or Sunday school covering those sorts of things. It wasn't really that kind of church whereby they would try and strike fear into you about certain things. But I think that obviously there was just that undercurrent of, if it's not anything to do with the Catholic Church, then it's, you're going to go to hell anyway. The good old Catholic guilt. I was going to, Natalie gave a really nice description of, magic and witchcraft as well. Crowley, just to invoke that somewhat controversial name, Crowley defined magic as being the art of effecting change in accordance with will. I'm going to say that again, just for emphasis, the art of effecting change in accordance with will. So that means that you are calling on the energies around you. It could be calling on the powers of nature. It could be calling on the gods or elementals. And Natalie again gave a lovely description of the different means by which you could draw in energy. You can also raise your own energy to direct that as well. And it really is just, there's nothing inherently evil about affecting change in accordance with will, unless your will is off. If your will is to cause harm or to do something nasty to somebody, yeah, absolutely, you can do that. But in and of itself, it's really a very peaceful. I don't really describe it as religion, belief system, perhaps.
What do you think, Michelle? What's your answer to my question? Oh,
Sorry, I had to unmute
no,
myself
that's
there.
fine. You're good.
I don't know. For me, there's certain things that I don't follow, I guess is the best way to put it. Like the threefold and all of that. I don't really follow that. I do my own thing. I, take a bunch of things and just put it into one. There's nothing like going outside and like grounding yourself or um helping somebody else ground who's just having a horrible time. That's what we are there for. We are there to help. We are there to, whatever you need, we have it. I just wish there was a less of a stigma, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
around it, just because, they think we worship the devil and we
Or that
do all
there's
these
just paranormal.
right, and we do all these satanic rituals when in fact we do nothing like that.
I
Nothing like
really,
that.
I personally, I think and tell me if I'm wrong here, but like, I think it's getting less and less of, like, I think more and more people are starting to understand it. Like, it's I gotta be careful how it's a very trendy thing. I was going to say something different, but it's a very trendy thing to be into Wicca, at least here in the States. And did you guys find the same thing? Like, is it becoming more normal and accepted?
Well, let's first do something else. Cleo,
Okay.
do you mind defining what a Gardnerian Wiccan is, or the other school of Wicca, versus the more culturally exciting idea today that everybody calls themselves a Wiccan?
Thank you for the invitation to do that. There is a tendency to conflate the idea of Wicca with the idea of witchcraft, and they are not. There is a connection, but they're not the same thing. So all Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan. So Wicca is a very defined subset of witchcraft. Wicca, to be Wiccan, you would either be a Gardnerian witch or an Alexandrian witch. And in order to be Gardnerian or Alexandrian, you would have been initiated into those traditions by somebody who was initiated into those traditions. And if you followed the lineage back, it would lead directly back to Alexander's, or it would lead directly back to Gerald Gardner. So being a Gardnerian witch, I have a lineage of initiation which can be traced back to Gerald Gardner. A lot of people these days, and I think, and not to be mean to people from America, but I think it does seem to happen more in America because I think it's more removed from those forms of witchcraft from the UK, and I think that distinction is becoming lost. And I think more people call themselves Wiccan, where strictly speaking they're a witch rather than Wiccan. And I don't say that with any snobbery or sense of superiority. I just happened to be incredibly lucky to be initiated into a Gardnerian coven because those were the teachers who appeared when I was ready. So it was just a matter of fate that I happened to become a Gardnerian witch. And I don't think that I am better or superior than anybody else, however you come to your craft or however you practice and what you're taught or what you teach yourself.
Also, it's important for people to understand, excuse me, Wicca, as created by Gardner, is only about, 74 years old? He actually started teaching it in 49, but he started working on it in the 30s.
Did he? Is it that far back? So you know more than I do.
Well, that's what I read. Whether or not it's true.
I think his books were popular in the kind of 50s and 60s, I think, weren't they?
Right.
I think another thing that it really doesn't get talked nearly enough about, and I think there's a misconception on it, is when we talk about a witch, we automatically go to the feminine, to being females. But witches can be both male and female. And the energy from both of those really contributes to what it is that you're working on. So a lot of people automatically think that if you're a male, then you're a warlock, and that is a whole different ballpark than what as witches is what we do. So I think that's something that really I feel needs to be addressed because that's not something people talk about when they talk about witches.
I think it's a really important point to make. And with initiatory craft in Gardnerian Wicca and Alexandrian Wicca, if you're a woman, you are initiated by a man. And if you are a man, you are initiated by a woman. But exactly as you say, everybody's a witch.
And when people say like initiation, for some reason, I always feel like people think that means, a sacrifice of some sort, being initiated, some bloodletting or something. And the initiation, like I know for me on more of a pagan side, it is that year and a day. And that is a year and a day of training, of learning, of mentorship, of watching and learning everything. And then in a year and a day, you're able to make that decision if this is the path that you're choosing and this is the work that you want to do, and then being able to proceed forward with that. So I know, at least for me, that initiation process isn't something that just immediately I'm a witch and immediately I can do all these. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of understanding that history, like with what Cleo was saying about, where it backs, where it originates from, and how that plays a part into today. Because you have so many different branches. Because when people think of witchcraft, they think pagan, Wiccan, whatever, but they have all their different subgroups. You've got Norse paganism, and understanding where you fall and within each one, I think also really helps.
If you're going to be cutting the heads
not
off chickens,
live
that's
chicken
to
heads.
become a hard rock star from
Yeah,
the
that's Ozzy. No, I think, sometimes people make jokes, and I think putting jokes up is good sometimes. I don't think anybody's mocking anybody, but that is, it is like, that's my perception of witchcraft. I'm not saying today, but that used to be. Like, I figured there's some blood sacrifice. There's definitely a pentagram on the floor. There's a lot of skull candles. There's knives and cutting wrists and all kinds of crazy. That was my perception.
It's not to say that there's not groups like that, because there are groups like that very much so believe that is how they need to do things. But that is not a blanket coverall for witches and for what we believe in.
Let's jump down
and sorry, can I just interrupt? I was just going to say, like blood sacrifices could be a thing, but really the best sacrifice that you could give is your own blood. And usually the way that that's done is, the little, sorry, my husband's in the background making a whole load of noise. The little sharps that diabetics use for letting a tiny drop of blood to test their fingers. So, it's a safe way, it's an easy way, and you can get a few drops of blood without, severing an artery or anything.
So it's not a stone dagger and you're not slitting your wrist?
No, exactly.
No.
It's just a tiny little sharp that, you might prick your finger and let a few drops of blood, and that's your sacrifice.
Gotcha.
That also leads on to what forms of blood are not an appropriate sacrifice, which, that's going to lead into the menstruation conversation. And I can go into that now. I'm going off on one.
Annie is asked, can you be a practicing Catholic and be a witch? And before I turn this over to you guys and to some of the people here who haven't spoken yet, I just wanted to point out one thing that is misquoted from the Bible. In Leviticus, it says, "Suffer not a witch to live." Well, that's a bad translation. In the original translation, it says, "Suffer not a poisoner to live." So there's a mistake there. That is not what the Bible actually says. There is no condemnation there.
Well, another thing too
Can you be a Catholic or a Christian and be a witch?
Yeah.
People are. You can be what you want.
There's Christian witches, and they fall into every category. And I think the general public alone participates in so many forms of ritualistic practices on their everyday to day. Like filling up your bathtub with water and putting the Epsom salt and maybe some flower petals or oil in it. That's your cauldron, and you're now soaking in it. And when you get out, all that negativity just goes down the drain. And it's that cleansing. And it's the same thing that we do when we're doing investigations and protection and saging and releasing. It's the same things, but these are things that people participate in and do that they don't even realize has such a strong connection to what we do as well.
By the way, for people who don't know, Epsom salts are amazing for you, for getting rid of negative energy, for releasing all of that. So use them in your baths, please, if you've got that. I'm going to turn this over to either Natalie, who hasn't spoken at all.
Yeah, I was trying to swing it that way. Trying to get Natalie in here. Natalie, what's your background and what are your thoughts on what we've been talking about? We haven't included you yet.
Oh gosh, my background. Definitely lean more towards pagan. We don't really put a label on it because I don't. Just me personally, I don't do labels. The best way that I can describe it is kind of like what Michelle said. I do the same thing. I mean, we're different, obviously, but I take a little bit of everything and just kind of make it my own. I knew from a very young age that I loved. I mean, I first really started out with rocks. I was that kid that instead of coming home with pockets full of candy, I would come home with rocks. And, you know, I would make stone circles with them. And a lot of the things that I did, I didn't realize what I was doing. It just, I did it. I was that kid that made potions, you know, in a bowl with like mud, rocks, sticks, flowers, you know, things like that. And I just my main thing is rocks and crystals. That's what I do. But I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, yep.
I feel like I went on a tangent.
No, I wanted to get you in here because you quietly joined the room and we hadn't talked to you yet. So one thing I'd like to ask, and here again, I'm trying to keep my damn mouth shut, but I can't. This comes up in the foundation all the time, is that we have a lot of clients that believe that somebody has cursed them. So my question's twofold, and I'll let you. In fact, I'm going to dump my camera. But one, is there a way that you guys can tell if somebody has been cursed? And two, is a witch the appropriate person to go to get rid of that curse? And I'm going to shut my mouth. Whoever.
I'm going to preface whatever anybody else says by saying, in all likelihood, you haven't been cursed, because cursing takes a lot of energy and a lot of time, a lot of effort. There has to be a lot of emotion behind it. In order to curse somebody, in order to curse somebody effectively, you need to have a heck of a lot of emotion behind it to fuel that curse. Now, having said that, curses are massively effective, and yeah, totally, you can curse people, you can cause people serious harm, you can kill people with cursing.
They're far more common here in South America. And
yes, I think
you can hire people to perform curses and black magic very easily.
Totally.
It's a different world, though. It's a totally different set of cultures.
In the Western world, in developed countries, it's generally incredibly unusual for people to be cursed. One of the really great books on the subject is Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune, and I would recommend that book to anybody that thinks they've been cursed, because actually for probably 3/4 of the book, she goes to great lengths to explain why you probably haven't been cursed, and then gives you some sensible methods to use, you know, if you really do think that you have got a curse going on. So her advice is fantastic, but honestly, 99 times out of 10, it's not a curse. 99 times out of 10, my God, 99 times out of 100, my Ritalin hasn't kicked in, we can tell. It's not a curse. And, you know, but I will also say that if you believe that you have been cursed, that is just as effective at working against you as having been cursed. So even if you just led somebody to believe that you had cursed them, it's going to work just as well as actually cursing them. And so the best thing to do is, if you think you've been cursed, is persuade yourself that you haven't and completely ignore it. If it persists, then carry on. But I'll let somebody else speak from then on. But I wanted to say, yeah, usually it isn't most of the time. And people do tend to get themselves into a flat panic over it when it could just be a series of coincidental, unfortunate events. We have bad luck sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than that power of suggestion that we deal with when doing investigations as well, even when we're looking at evidence or any type of case. I mean, Cleo hit it kind of right on the head for that one. It's usually not the case, but there are things that you can do if you're concerned about it. If you're choosing to reach out to somebody, though, look at the credentials. Please do your research on them, not just anybody who totes around a bag full of crystals may necessarily know what they're talking about. Don't be afraid to ask questions and to talk to others about it. But you can do different things. Even just that protection, that cleansing can be a good place to start. That mind space with meditation can also help. Just envisioning whether it be that white room, that white aura, whatever it might be around you for protection. Those are ways to be able to tell as well.
It's all about intention.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like words and thoughts can be curses, and they can be intentions put out into the universe. So it's important to be mindful of that.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
I have to say, I know of plenty of cases where people have been cursed and not been aware of it.
It wasn't a very good curse.
Well, what?
Sorry.
No, no, wait
She
a minute.
cackled.
They were affected, and then later found out that they were cursed.
Okay.
But for me personally, I don't worry about it. I've had people say that they've tried to curse me, and certainly they've tried to curse my grandfather. I've never noticed it. More often than not, people want to blame life misfortunes on a curse. I had a lovely young woman write to me and ask me if she possibly had a spider curse, because no matter where she lives, and she's lived in probably a dozen places, spiders are always attracted to her. And I said, no, it's not a curse. There are certain people that attract certain kinds of animals, like women in their menstrual cycle are bothered horribly by gnats in Scotland, whereas I could be walking right next to them and get nothing. So that's just an example.
If that lady was pagan or a witch or something, I would say that perhaps the goddess Minerva might be trying to get her attention. But
No, she's not.
No, she's not that way inclined. Yeah. I mean, for me, if I suddenly found, apart from the fact that I'm not a big fan of spiders, but I don't
Neither
go.
is she. It's the one thing she hates more than anything.
I used to be absolutely terrified of them. I'm so much better now, and I certainly. That's my husband's car going down the road. I would certainly now go out of my way to catch them and release them outside rather than massacre them.
Right.
Which I used to do.
Also plays a part on that, on the fear side of things. I mean, spiders, snakes, scorpions, those are things that people normally, excluding some, are afraid of, and they themselves can represent the embodiment of whatever it is that's being done. But depending on the type of curse and who maybe was casting said curse can also play a fact into how it's affecting that individual. Some are intent on doing harm, others are just intent on turning your life upside down. So there's different things. They're not all one and the same. They're all different.
One thing too that comes up a lot in our cases, it was in the questions, and it relates to this, is generational curses. Is that really a real thing? I mean, how powerful are those?
I never believed in it until I had to fight one and break one in Philadelphia. It was so powerful that the woman was coming under very, very strong oppression. It was making her husband, I won't call it possession, but he was sleepwalking. and doing things that he normally wouldn't do. And as soon as I broke the curse, we had trouble getting the car to start on the way there. And then as soon as we got in the car and got on the highway, the minute we got on the highway, the brakes gave out and we slammed into another vehicle. So yeah, the payback for helping people can be pretty tough. But that's as much as I've got for that.
Are we still on?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've got a
Yeah.
message here. I tried to boot this John Bill Clinton Smith guy. Now I got a message saying that we are not. StreamYard has lost your access to Facebook.
Well, folks, can you hear us? Send us a message.
Yeah. Somebody say that because I'm gonna boot this guy.
Anybody? Just
Please,
somebody
somebody
write
comment
and tell us if we're there.
If not, I'm gonna have to click this thing to.
If you're listening, can you leave us a comment and let us know that you can still hear us?
Or at least write us and say you haven't heard us.
Yeah, I think we got
That might be harder.
I guess we're not on. So yeah,
my
go
phone
ahead.
and it's still going.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
For my phone, it still shows live and it's still
Oh, great. There we go.
going through. So might be the Facebook thing.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay. Go ahead.
There's
So I mean, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
there's a really good book on curses called it's out of print, but if you can find a copy, it's really worth reading. It's called Witchcraft, Its Power in the World Today, and it's by William Seabrook, and it's fantastic. And he kind of traveled the world and spoke to witches or practitioners of magic in lots of different countries and got stories about real life curses and how they worked, why they worked, what was effective. It's fascinating reading. Definitely worth a go if you can find a copy of it. All of our comments have gone really quiet.
I
It's
know,
quite
that's what I'm
disconcerting, isn't it?
You guys still talk as if we're live, but I'm gonna check on my phone.
Yeah.
Make sure
Yeah,
we're
I'm
live.
checking my own
There was-
as we speak.
I saw a
Yeah, because they got quiet. Like all of a sudden, it's
It says live.
No, we're here.
well. But the thing is, we're broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook, and I wonder if we got kicked off of Facebook. Oh, Kimberly, say people. Kimberly, can you comment in the comments? Because I'm getting private messages that we're still on, but the comments are not happening.
Well, we're on Facebook. That I got you.
Okay.
we're
Well, I
half
guess
there
we'll just
anyway.
go without comments if that's how we have to do it because some butthole had to have something in his. Like I said, I tried to boot this John Smith guy because he's making inappropriate comments in the comment section, and that's when I
Nice.
got the message. I have a feeling it's related to that somehow, but yeah, let's just go on with our topic. And his comments are not good. Yeah, Kimberly's saying people are still making comments and we can't see them, so we'll just
Okay. Oh, that's
we will just have
frustrating.
to maybe I'll monitor them on my phone. Go ahead and keep talking about the topic. I'm gonna look into this.
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing.
I'm going to check. Sweet.
So
Oh, we've gone.
no,
I
actually,
was just going to ask others if I'm not a big fan of labeling. I think it limits us, and so I like a more eclectic approach to what you're doing. I think that works. But how would you?
Oh no.
Oh no, we've lost Chris.
Talk about curses and now everything's going awry.
Who started talking about curses? Somebody's casting.
Maybe it did because the comments are still rolling like crazy on my phone. So
Oh, that's
we'll
hilarious.
just have to figure it out after this show. So
Chris, we lost you.
I wonder if you can still see the.
that curse he was talking about finally kicked in.
We do get cases in the foundation where people think they've been cursed. I mean,
Yeah, a lot.
I've had a UK case which somebody believed was a generational curse, but this was what had been told by various thousands of psychics and whoever else this guy had gone to see before he came to us. I'm not necessarily convinced it's a curse.
Well, like I asked too, like, so let's here again, we'll go around the room here, but like, so you guys could definitely deal with curses if you find that a client actually has one. Is there a way to tell if they actually have one?
Stephanie's
like
got a good trick.
I think like what Chris was saying though, with like the oppression and things like that. But I mean, you still get kind of into that tricky territory because oppression can be a representation of so many other different things, also.
Yeah, I know people also do the egg cleansing, you know. Michelle knows more about that. She's my go-to for that kind of thing.
Oh, is Michelle where that came from?
Yes.
Ah, so
Michelle,
do tell us about that, Michelle, because Stephanie told me about it and I hadn't seen it before, so I'm keen to know about it as well.
I just was going over like egg readings with her, and more of an egg reading and cleansing. There's different things with the egg that you can, or I guess the white of the egg, whatever it is, depending on how it's in the glass, if it's fanned out, if it's, there's so many different ways that you can look at it. But
so for people that don't know what we're talking about, I assume, because I don't really know because I only saw it from Stephanie, I assume that the person breaks an egg into a glass of water. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's lukewarm water, like room temperature water, a little bit of lemon, and then the egg. The egg needs to be room temperature, though, usually.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah.
And so then you learn how to interpret what happens with the egg.
Yeah, depending on how it's coming out in the glass. Sorry, hang on. Sorry, somebody's calling me. Hang on.
So, a lady who practiced Santeria, and this lady had talked that she was cursed, she was having abdominal pain and everything, and this lady did a ritual, so to speak, and took this egg and rubbed it around her belly while saying her chants, and then when she cracked the egg over the sink, a scorpion came out instead, and it had absorbed that curse, and then it was disposed of. But I mean, every belief has a slightly different way of interpreting and going about removing, dispelling, things like that. So it kind of also depends on their beliefs as well and their practices.
Yes, that's true. If somebody was cursed and they were Christian, you might probably want a different approach for that. You have to be sensitive to people's own personal belief systems and religions as well, don't you? Not everybody is going to be open to something that looks more obviously like witchcraft. It's good to be able to adapt what you do to make it more appropriate for individual clients, depending on their beliefs and preferences.
And for those fears, auras as well, when you can see somebody's aura, if there's something attached to them or that is interfering with their energy, that's usually something that can be felt or seen.
Jack had a question related to like superstitions and do they have roots and curses, like walking under a ladder? Does that actually cause bad luck, or breaking a mirror, or what is there a root in witchcraft behind those superstitions?
I think if you believe it does, it is.
I think so.
I've got a friend of mine that, I'm not kidding, we have driven miles to avoid the black cat, like out of the way.
To avoid the what?
To avoid a black cat crossing the road.
Oh, black cat, really?
He'll see one on the side of the road. He turns around and will go way out of his way to go so that cat doesn't.
So funny enough, black cats actually don't represent anything negative or bad. They're actually signs of good luck.
So Sabrina lied to me.
Yes.
Yeah, she did.
They're actually
a black cat. Okay. I mean, I think a lot of these superstitions or old wives' tales are founded in common sense almost. So if you believe that walking under a ladder is bad luck, well, that's probably because there's a good chance of a ladder falling on your head or somebody falling off a ladder onto you. It's just a stupid thing to do, isn't it? And so, saying that it's bad luck is probably just a way of stopping people from, putting themselves in more risk than they really need to. And I think a lot of those things have evolved kind of from sensible advice, perhaps.
What about
Um,
breaking mirrors specifically? Because that one, there's a lot of, in the paranormal world and stuff, and it may be in witchcraft as well. In witchcraft too, with the scrying and stuff like that. Does the breaking mirror curse or superstition have anything to do with like scrying or a portal or anything like that? Is that why it's been labeled as superstition?
So for me personally, I use broken mirrors in some of my spell work. For me, they're not bad luck. I use them. I've got them on my altar. For me personally, I do use broken mirrors.
What is So you say you have one on your altar. What is the purpose of the mirror? What is it?
It's good for basically sending negative energy that's coming to you and reflecting it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think the origin of the broken mirror idea is that back in the day when the first mirrors were made, they were backed with real silver, and so a mirror was a very luxury item that not everybody could afford to have. So if you broke a mirror, you've destroyed something that was actually incredibly expensive. And therefore, everybody would be keen to
Uh,
avoid breaking a
That's
mirror.
that's disappointing too, because I was really hoping that
Sorry.
there was some evil story behind it instead of just it's all about the money.
I mean, I've broken mirrors, and I think it's the same as attitude towards curses as well. I think if I convinced myself that I was going to have 7 years bad luck, I probably would.
Yeah.
But if I just think, oh bugger, I broke a mirror, sweep it up, and either stick it in a jar for spell work or whatever, and just brush it off, it doesn't do anything. You could easily curse yourself though by believing it.
Yeah, I actually did scrying one time. We were in a situation where we got to do a lockdown on the house for 72 hours, and we had cameras everywhere. The house was empty. It was a really good investigation thing, and we were going to try things like that. And I did scrying. And one thing that happened when I was doing it, in like the video camera didn't pick it up that we had on the mirror, but in my mind, I saw animal combinations like a horse head on a pig's body. They were just flashing like for it could have been like a minute or two, but it seemed like for 20 minutes, and I was almost in like a trance-like state, and it was just boom boom boom, and then all of a sudden the last image that I saw before I like snapped out of it was my son. So I don't know, that was my experience with scrying. It was very
That's
very,
pretty cool.
it was weird. Like I do it again. I don't know if I would do it in a client's house where they're having issues, but like as an experiment or something like that, I would definitely try that.
This past Halloween for Samhain, we had a scrying mirror on our altar, and then behind it was also a lake. So the energy from the water elements and then being outside, and then also from the mirror, was something that we were able to kind of call upon for that. But I mean, yeah, it can be used for all kinds of different purposes, whether it's for communication, the portals that we come across on cases. But it doesn't mean that it has to be negative or that a negative entity or whatever is going to come through it. They can be used for other things as well. But I think even with the scrying mirror, your intent, because when you're looking at the mirror, you're supposed to have no thoughts, no images. You're just to look kind of past the mirror itself. And then what you see is what comes forward. But it would be no different than reading tea leaves. The things that you see in that, or reading candle wax, those kinds of things, they're all pretty much in the same category of what you're trying to achieve.
I have a
Yes,
question, ladies. How many of you use tarot cards?
Oh, that's really spooky because I was just about to talk about tarot cards. I was about to follow on from Natalie by saying tarot cards are the same. It's just a tool that connects you with the current. And
Yep.
I mean, strictly speaking, you don't need any of those things. You don't need mirrors or crystals or bowls of water or tarot cards. I mean, if it just helps with the connection, it's just almost a prop. But yeah, sorry,
The only
Stephanie, yes,
tool
I
you
do.
need is yourself. When you're
Exactly.
doing anything, you just need yourself. But it does help, especially if you're just getting started and you're learning. Having something to physically hold on to helps you focus your intent. But once you've been doing it for a while, eventually you don't need anything at all. I know for me, like energy work is a big one for me, especially like when we're on investigations, and being able to know how to use the energy work around you to be able to read the room, to read the area, to read that person, really plays a big part in it also.
Definitely. Were you going somewhere with? Is there a follow-on to the how
No,
many use tarot? It's just a.
you ladies use them when you do your investigating, or
So we use me, myself, and two other of my investigators follow Norse paganism. So we don't necessarily use them on site, but sometimes before going to a location, we'll actually do runes to see if there are any messages before we go in, and just kind of that sense of guidance and information that we might be receiving. But even when we do our investigations, there's usually very little knowledge of what's going on before we even enter there, so that there's not that power of suggestion.
I'm going to make a confession and say it never ever occurred to me to use tarot cards on an investigation, and I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm going to try it.
Me neither. That's actually the first time for me.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm quite keen to give that a bash.
Now, I've done oracle readings for clients after the fact. After we've done our investigation, we've helped, for that. But during the actual investigation, not so much.
That's cool. I think it's really. What decks does everybody prefer using?
I have like 6 of them.
Sorry, I'm moving rooms. Sorry.
I have a bunch of decks, but I really like.
Yeah.
I do find that
I have
the
an
traditional.
Doreen Virtue.
Yes, I've got
that
some
was
of
my
those.
very first one when I first started getting involved. She was my first one. It was an Angel Oracle deck. But now I have one that's for the fairies. I have cats. I have an herbologist one, so it's all the different type of plants and their needs. I like those things.
I love the Rider-Waite-Smith deck just for ease of. I find it really easy to read for some reason, and I don't. We're probably going off on a tangent here, but I was taught to read tarot without the book, so I was taught to read tarot intuitively, which I think is a really great way to read tarot, and I think it makes it easy for anybody to read tarot if you can just trust your instincts in saying what you feel when you see the image on the card. And with different readings, the same card will inspire different feelings in you each time. You don't come up with the same thing each time, but the book definition is going to be the same each time, and I think it loses a lot of if you read tarot cards using a book. I think you can lose a lot of the subtlety of the reading and the personal nature of the reading, and almost perhaps lose some of that connection as well with the cards and with the person that you're reading for. But I'm a massive fan of the Rider-Waite-Smith things.
I did a reading for my fiance for the first time a few days ago, and he's like, "Well, shouldn't you be looking at the informational book that comes with it?" I go, "No." I go, "It's not about what's on the page." I go, "It's the messages from what you're seeing, what you're feeling. Do you see an image in the card that isn't necessarily what they're meaning you to look at?" Like those kinds of things. And then we went through the whole reading. And then afterwards, I'm like, now we'll open up the book and see what definitions A gave. And it was just spot on the whole way. He goes, "I didn't believe in these things until we sat down and did this." It's just, and it is something like, not everybody believes in them. Not everybody, especially I know like with the Oracle, they're guidance cards. And our life, everything that we're doing, every decision we make changes the outcome of what we're going to do. We are constantly at crossroads. And so just because the cards necessarily show that it's going one direction doesn't mean that that may not change and then going a different direction.
all right.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Stephanie, you cut out. What'd you say?
Oh, I was just going to throw something out there. I was thinking it would be cool if we can give tips on how to keep people safe, protection wise. And you guys are all great with protection and all of that. So maybe you could give some to whoever's listening.
So one of the stones that I like to use on my investigations for protection is black tourmaline. I like to keep that with me. I also put it at all four corners of the property, of wherever we're at or in that room. They're great for that. Even just having if you get a mason jar full of sand, in some beliefs, a negative spirit has to stop and count every grain of sand before they're allowed to enter into your home or into that room. So it kind of works as like a protection barrier, so to speak. But just knowing your crystals alone can help with this.
Black tourmaline's amazing. I love that as a protective crystal. And black obsidian as well is another really great one. And it Stephanie, I saw Stephanie's lips move, but I didn't hear any sound.
Oh no, I was
okay. Black tourmaline, black obsidian. And you can also cleanse them and get them to remove any negative energy from the surroundings. So cleanse your crystals. I cleanse my crystals by running them under water, usually just from a tap because I don't live particularly close to any streams or anything. So I will run them under a tap. I tend to use warm water because I hate putting my hands in cold water. I hate being cold. I wouldn't use hot, but just something that's comfortable for you to have your hands in. I tend to often use a bit of liquid hand soap as well. So I have the sensation of cleaning the crystal physically, which also helps me to envisage the negative energy leaving it as the water runs over it and as the dirt or fingerprints or anything that happens to be on it comes off. So under the running tap, bit of hand soap, imagine all of the negative energy running out of there. And then afterwards, hold it in your hand and program it with your intent. So if your intent is, I want you to keep me protected from all harm or, negative entities or negative energy, whatever, tell that to the crystal and then just, pop it in wherever it is, your living room, wherever, if you're having problems in a particular room of the house, pop it there and let it do its job.
And it doesn't have to just be crystals. I mean, you can use other herbs. You can use other types of like birch wood and things like that. There's other elements that you can incorporate as well.
Yeah, rosemary, lavender oil in a. It's funny enough, I do this, and then after I joined the foundation, Chris told me that Lorraine used to do exactly the same. Drops of lavender oil into a water bottle, shaken up together and then used as a spray. And you can use that to cleanse yourself or your environment.
It's around the house.
Magical Febreze.
How about you, Natalie G?
Well, I don't know if you can see it, but I always have these. It's a zestiolite, and I have a herkimer on me. But I always have like black tourmaline, smoky quartz, and labradorite on me. And as far as like advice, I'm very big on intention. If you believe something, it is. So what may work for me may not work for somebody else. Yep. And vice versa. But I think the main thing to really remember is, like I said, if you believe this certain thing or this action or this word or this envision will protect you and you believe it 100%, it will. So exactly. Like for me, yeah. So like for me, I just kind of one day came up with something, a wall of mirrors around me, around my family, with the mirrors facing outside, with the intention of nothing, whatever is sent to us is returned to the sender. And it's worked like a charm. It may not work for somebody else, but just remember that if you believe, it will.
Intent is everything. Yep. And if you're Christian and you wear a cross and you believe that wearing your cross will protect you, it will, because You believe that it will, and that's the power of your belief and your intent and your will.
Cross and Ankh.
Yeah, any representation of any deity that that you, I don't know, I'm touching this, I'm wearing a dragon today. Any representation of a deity that that's associated with your religion or that you work with. It could be a Star of David, it could be a cross, it could be an Om or a lotus, or I don't know, a goddess representation.
I have a goddess for mine.
A crystal, and it really is just what you feel. I think your intuition will tell you as well what will work for you. I think you can have very strong feelings about certain things that you could have or use or hold or have in your environment, that it would be protective, and trust those instincts. I think that's really powerful.
There was a question that I don't know if you saw it, Jeff, that came across. A lot of people were asking about how the moon cycles, the moon phases play a part into what we do.
Ooh.
And I think that's a big part of it, because even with investigations, like, we log all that stuff. Is it a full moon? Is it a waxing? Is it a waning? And what we do as well for certain types of rituals and things like that, we can charge water and crystals with a full moon. You know, going into a full moon, the waxing is going to bring in the positive, and then the waning is expelling the negative. So that's something that I know, for me at least, plays a really big part in what we do.
And on the new moon, in fact, it was particularly strong this time because it hit me 2 days earlier than it normally would. I woke up in the morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I had the weirdest dreams. And my husband was like, so did I. And I said, well, I wonder if it's the new moon. Well, we looked at it, it was 2 days ahead, but apparently it's like a super new moon or something. So maybe just like extra strong. But on the new moon, you're much more attuned psychically, even if you are not, inclined towards, a spiritual nature. You may well notice that you have really weird, vivid, intense dreams all night on the night of a new moon, because it affects us that way. It's not witchcraft, it's probably physics and biology.
Yeah, I had the same thing happen too, and maybe it was in the moon cycle, but there was about 4 or 5 days where, man, my dreams were just weird, and I actually remembered them, because normally I don't, I don't remember dreaming, but like they were just, it was crazy.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah, I don't remember my dreams either, but building off of what Cleo said, this past moon, within like a month, I've dreamt of solar eclipses, full blown on watching them in my dreams 3 times. And I don't remember my dreams either. So that was.
When did that happen?
Oh gosh. The first one was a couple weeks ago. My next one was the day right after that one, and just not last night, but the previous night, I dreamt of the next one. Okay. And it's funny because I'm also very big into symbology and numerology, and the only solar eclipse, according to Google, that is happening this year is October 14th. So I'm kind of thinking, I've also seen a lot of numerology. I see the angel numbers multiple times a day, every day. I never look for it or wait for it. I just look at the time or look at a certain whatever, and I see it. So I've been seeing a lot of 444 and 555, and then I looked up, symbology of solar eclipses, and it's all tying in together with like new beginnings. So it's kind of, I'm thinking something's going to happen on the 14th. I don't feel like it's bad, but yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, I went on a tangent. We're talking about the moon phase.
It was fascinating. I always think dream interpretation is really cool, because the best person to interpret your dreams is yourself. There are so many people that post in groups saying, oh, I had this really vivid dream and this happened. What do you think this means? And I always think, well, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret that? And regardless of what, because it was interesting to hear you interpret that dream yourself, because I was listening, I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if, and actually, it was going to be my question: is what do you think that means? But you've got there anyway. I thought, I wonder if maybe she feels that we've lost her.
Lost her.
Something's
Like
something's being hidden, or but then somebody's own interpretation of dreams is just so much better than something that anybody else or any book can tell you. What does it mean? What does the symbolism mean? Take it literally. What's happening really? Forgetting all of the, I don't know, chasing downstairs or whatever.
Another funny thing about
I'm
dreams
sorry,
is my wife.
totally lost connection for a second.
Sorry,
I don't know
Natalie.
if you were asking me something. I'm also lagging a little bit too, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
You're
Okay.
cool. We were just talking about dream interpretation. You didn't miss anything.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, my wife.
Just Cleo
My
talk.
wife started listening
You didn't
to. My wife started listening to some of those guided meditations at night when she goes to sleep. And when she turns those on, I have the craziest dreams and the most
Really?
vivid dreams. But I'm not even, because I sit in my office and I hear her listening to that, and it's weird. It affects me later when I go to sleep. Every time she turns those things on, I get the weirdest stuff going on. It's crazy.
That's
I think
not
we wanted to-
necessarily a bad thing.
Right. So I guess it kind of proves that there is something to those guided meditations and things like that. It affects me, even though I can't hear specifically what the guy is saying, but I can hear it. So my subconscious must be absorbing all of it, and then just later on when I go to sleep, it takes effect. But I don't know. It's crazy. So I mean, like I said, it does kind of prove that those things actually work. We're trying to keep this closer to an hour now. We used to do 2 hours back in the day. So do we want to, do you guys want to keep talking about something specific, or should we try and wrap it up, or what? Oh, we lost her again.
Ooh. I just wanted to say also Natalie's method of the mirror protection. If there's anybody that's listening who's struggling with being an empath, and I kind of really cringe these days to use the word empath because everybody's an empath these days, aren't they? If you are an empath and you struggle with picking up on energies and stuff from the people around you or from your environment, Natalie's technique of using mirrors is fantastic for protection from outside environmental energies and just general gunk that you don't want to pick up from others, just as a shielding technique. And the other thing that you can do if mirrors don't work for you as a visualization tool is lightning rods. So just imagine a series of metal rods all around you or around your home, wherever you want to do it, buried into the ground. So in the same way that lightning rods catch lightning and then just send it into the earth, you're going to imagine that these lightning rods are going to catch any negative entities, they're going to catch any negative energies. It's just going to send it all safely into the ground, so nothing gets through that can bother you. Sometimes people can feel the mirror visualization to be a bit isolating because it kind of just bounces everything. But, you could modify your visualization to still allow good things through. But the lightning rod technique is much easier to visualize the good things coming through, but keeping out the negative crud that you don't want in your life. And that's useful for protection in any situation. I do that if I'm going into a shopping center, a museum. Secondhand shops are an absolute nightmare for an empath. Certain places are just really challenging, busy places. Mind, body, spirit festivals are absolutely the worst places for me as an empath, because all the people who tend to visit them tend to be really, I don't want to sound rude, but desperate or needy in some way, looking for something. They're looking for healing, or they're looking for a reading from their, like maybe they want to communicate with lost loved ones, or, there's something that's lacking in their life that they're searching for. And they come into these mind, body, spirit festivals, and it just comes off them in waves. And if you're sensitive to other people's energy, it's so draining.
Can I ask you this?
Hmm.
What about paranormal conventions? What's because I've been to a few of those, and the energy there seems to be so dark because there's a lot of very
Oh.
dark artwork. There's a lot, there's a lot of darkness involved in these paracons. Do you get
I
the same effects with those?
I think a lot of people don't take the necessary precautions. I think
Right.
when they go, especially those
Yeah.
that are just getting started and haven't quite learned the ropes yet, I think they kind of go in with this idea of how things are going to go, and they don't look at the whole picture. So they're not using anything for protection. They're not cleansing before and after, however they might go about it. So I think you get a lot of those residual energy and those attachments. And I think that's what we're
Mm.
picking up on, because even when you go to a location that has paranormal activity, or at least did at one point, most of what we come across now is energy and spirits that have come in on somebody else that's just been kind of left there. It's like throwing your garbage on the ground and then not picking it up, and it just keeps accumulating. And I think that's kind of the same thing with those conventions.
Because when I
I
first
think.
started into this, I went to a paranormal convention. That was like day 2 of my professional ghost hunting career. Not obviously I'm not a professional, but so we went to a paranormal convention. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of horror. There's a lot of satanic symbols. There's a lot of just dark energy, I guess. But we actually, and I'll make this short, but so we ended up investigating this place, part of it, and it was a known haunted location. And I saw a girl get choked out in the basement of this building. Like,
Wow.
I saw fingerprints on her neck that were bright maroon. They were outlined, and she freaking went down. And like Natalie said, it's because we just thought we were going for an entertaining thing. We didn't protect ourselves and stuff. We were just down there goofing around, having fun. And that same area, a big stage riser got thrown on somebody 3 different
Wow.
times that day. We found out later. So I mean, but I almost wonder if that paracon did contribute to why all of that stuff happened that day.
Yeah, it probably did. I mean,
Charged
as, as
that haunted location that was already haunted.
As psychics, as empaths, even just in general, we tend to put out this constant pulse of energy around us. But sometimes, especially if there's traumatic or there's a lot of emotion, turmoil, it kind of gets like a supercharge. And then that burst of energy can be shot out, and then things start to happen. We see that commonly if we're coming across a poltergeist type situation, especially in young adolescents. It's kind of the same general concept there of that energy being put out that's causing a lot of this, and it can affect us in so many different ways.
Yep.
I think what Natalie said to begin with was really on the money. The idea that there are a lot of paranormal enthusiasts there, and probably a lot of, I mean, we're all amateurs. There's no such thing as a professional in this game.
Yeah, I definitely.
A lot of inexperienced novices who are turning up on locations, or going to graveyards and maybe goading spirits, trying to get a response and ending up with attachments. They all pop into a paracon, and I mean, anything that they've picked up is going to be like, well, hey, ghost party, you're coming along for the ride.
And the same thing goes for witchcraft, though, with us witches. If you have a coven that's opening up a Sabbath or some type of ritual to the public, you're getting people who have this idea of what they're going to expect when you get there. And really, it's a bunch of us sitting around with tambourines and, some chanting, and we just look kind of silly half the time. I mean, right, have a bonfire, maybe some weenies or marshmallows, but it's nothing to the extent that people make up in their heads. But they come in with all of this, and they're expecting, especially Samhain. I love Samhain. I love what we do to celebrate and to acknowledge our ancestors, but I have a really hard time when you're bringing in a bunch of people who have not really learned what the craft is, and they're expecting, all these spirits to be dancing around you and communicating. And I wanted to inject it earlier, was that when it comes to energy and like us doing readings or cleansings or anything like that, as the individual who is doing that, we are exerting a lot of our own energy, and it gets exhausting. It becomes very taxing on us, whether it's through psychics or just mediumship, whatever it might be. That is our own energy that we're having to use to be able to communicate. So even we get tapped. And as somebody who does that, or if you're doing that, you need to know where your limit is and how much you can take. Because otherwise it's not going to be a good turnout, because you could get hurt, someone else could get hurt. You could open up something that you're not supposed to. Back to like the Samhain, everybody thinks Ouija boards need to be involved in everything, and that's not at all how it is.
That's actually a good lead into the final question. I think we should, and I'll go around the box here, and you guys all chime in on this. But so let's say somebody truly has an interest in becoming a Wicca or a witch or a pagan, or all some of these. I don't want to say alternative religions, but you know what I mean. Some, I guess, non-mainstream. What is the best way for somebody to pursue that? Because just like the paranormal stuff, I got to imagine Google is probably not the place to go, because you're going to get a lot of bad advice. There's probably bad advice in, uh, Facebook group pages, just like there's in paranormal. So if somebody truly wants to pursue this and join an actual coven or something like that, what do you guys suggest that they do?
For me, even with books, there are so many different books that cover so many different things. For me, I think you really have to step away from all of it, go into nature, sit there, embrace the natural elements around you. And for me, they called to me. I was raised as a Baptist. I used to go to the synagogue with my best friend. I started exploring other religions. But when it came to being in nature and being in the water, specifically for me, which might be because I'm a Pisces, but that for me is where I found my calm. And I found that inner peace. And I was able to tap into those elements. And that is what called to me, because I've learned high and low. And it wasn't until my parents started up what's now called Covenstead, I really started getting the opportunity to work on that, not so much as a solo practitioner, because I mostly have been a solo witch, but I've now had the opportunity to work with a coven. So be a part of local covens, see what they're about, talk with them. There's nothing wrong with asking questions about it. We have something in St. Louis called Pagan Picnic. They have lots of vendors and stuff, but they also have the School of Witchcraft down there and things like that. So you can talk with people who have knowledge and experience, and don't be quick to just jump into a topic. Oh, I'm a pagan. Oh, I'm a Wiccan. Really do your research and look back to it and find what calls to you. You might have a calling from the angels or the fae. All these different things can play a part into the path that you choose to follow.
I think that's the great thing. Sorry, Jeff.
Just real quick. So, no, I'm sorry, Cleo. I interrupted you. I asked a question.
I think Natalie's answer is lovely, and I totally agree with everything that you say. I couldn't have said it better myself. Totally. Forgot what I was going to say first of all, but the thing that I had in my mind was there is a really great book which is called A Witch Alone by Marion Green. And if you get hold of the book A Witch Alone by Marion Green, it isn't just a book to read, it's a book for exercises that will take you through a whole year and a day. And those exercises get you out into nature, and they get you following the seasons and becoming aware of what's around you and the changes in the bird song. The birds don't sing the same song all year. At certain times of the year, they start saying different things. Now, you don't have to be psychic or gifted to pick up on that. You have ears. If you can hear them, you can tell that song changes. At certain times of the year, it's, okay, yay, it's spring, let's get it on. So this book, A Witch Alone by Marion Green, if you follow that book from beginning to end, you are probably just about as much of a witch as anybody is ever, because it takes you through that whole cycle. Look for a coven, look for a teacher. They do say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Be very discerning about where you go. Some covens work skyclad, naked, and that's great if you're comfortable with it. And if you can trust the people that you're in circle with. But obviously it does lead to situations which may not be appropriate in some covens. Some covens don't have, a strong sense of ethics and morals and that kind of thing. You don't ever want to be put into a situation that you are not comfortable with. If something feels wrong to you, leave. Don't be talked into doing anything that you don't want to do, because you might be incredibly passionate about being a member of this coven, or you might be incredibly passionate about being a witch. But if that situation isn't right, get the heck out of there and find somewhere else, because those things do happen, and there are people out there who will exploit you regardless of your gender or sexuality, and they will prey on vulnerable people. And if you've got all of your clothes off and you're in a coven surrounded by a dozen other people, you're vulnerable. We all are in that situation, regardless of our power as witches or human beings or whatever. So yeah, that would be my my warning, I suppose. But there are great covens out there, and there are trustworthy people out there, and I think by far those are the majority. So yeah, I mean, be discerning about what you read. Don't believe everything that you read. If you read something, don't accept it at face value. Go out and try it for yourself and test it and see if it works. Try to get your knowledge from personal gnosis rather than book learning. The things that you discover for yourself are so much more valuable than the things that you read.
My very first
And I'll
book,
give it to Natalie.
my very first book is this one. It's The Elements of Witchcraft by Ellen Dugan.
And that's a good book.
It got me my start when I started researching, and it has had so much helpful information. I've got notes I've written in it and just logged and journaled my entire process. But working with the elements and learning like the meditation sessions that they have in there for you to go through are wonderful for those that are just starting to figure out like where they want to be and what they want to do. But it also talks about the process of the initiation with a year and a day. So that's really good information for people to have.
Keep a dream diary. Journal all of the things that you do. Journal the changes that you notice in nature. All of those things will help you on your path.
Natalie. Yep, same question. What advice do you have to somebody that's looking to pursue, getting into this?
Mm-hmm. Well, like what Natalie and Cleo said, beautiful, beautiful advice. I love it. I do have maybe a little different approach to it. I would say your intention, your gut, learn to listen to it. Because that is it can do anything from saving you to helping you make decisions, what to do and what not to do. I would say also research, definitely research, and don't just research, like look up things that you think that wouldn't interest you or have anything to do with you, because that's how you're going to learn what it is that you want to do. So research as much as you can. Trust your gut. If you want to follow advice, follow it. But if you don't. There's nothing wrong with being solo. There's nothing wrong with being in a coven. There's no right or wrong way to do your craft. And don't let anybody tell you how to do your craft, because it is yours and yours alone. Just remember that always.
I guess related real quick, are there any like buzzwords to avoid? Like if people are looking up how to get into something or how to be involved, is there something that's like stay the hell away from that?
Well, if you see the word skyclad come across, you might want to avoid that just the beginning. Skyclad is usually no clothing or very minimal clothing optional. So those are a little more for those that are confident in their self and their bodies. So if you're just getting started, you're super shy, don't like necessarily talking with people, I would avoid skyclad until you're more comfortable with it.
I was skyclad with my coven from day one, because that's just how the coven works, and it is that kind of it is kind of a baptism of sorts. It definitely, to get your kit off and be comfortable naked in a group of strangers in an entirely non-sexual situation was definitely a learning experience.
The hardest thing to find are people that are accepting. Like you should be able to go to a coven and just mesh and blend with them and really get along with them. Because if there's tension in the air, you're going to feel it. And it's not going to be a place where you can do a lot of light work. And that's what you're looking for, is working with the light.
And if you can do it naked, you can do anything.
Right.
Definitely.
I'd be mistaken for a polar bear because I'm that white guy. They'd say, "Oh my God, there's a bear in the room."
And understanding
That's the thing.
Sabbats, understanding what they are and what they represent. You know, Ostara with fertility. You got Beltane, which is where the Skyclad really comes into play. Things like that. But you've got Yule, which we celebrate alongside with Christmas, and you know, Ostara is Easter. We've got one coming up, Mabon. Things like that. Those are all things that we celebrate. And they're a great way for you to get started because there are different types of witches. You've got your kitchen witch, you've got your earth witch, things like that. So if you're in the kitchen and you can just concoct up a whole feast out of 3 items, you're probably a kitchen witch. I mean, that is where you feel strongest. If you work really well with plants, you know, you're a green witch and things like that. So those are all things to also kind of figure out about yourself.
And you could be a blend of those things.
I am.
You don't have, yeah, same. I mean, I'm a very eclectic kind of witch. I like, I like to pick and choose here and there, you know, depending on what I'm doing or how I feel or what the project is. I think it's good to be able to borrow from.
Yeah, even though I have
places.
a Norse pantheon that I follow, for me though, I just like to be under the spiritualist, the eclectic kind of broad blanket term, because I do take a little bit from everything and I find what calls to me and what works for me, because it's not, again, a one fits all.
There's no dogma in witchcraft. There's no rules. You know, any given coven could worship or work with different pantheons of gods, as Natalie so rightly said. You know, her coven works with Norse gods. There are, you know, there's the Roman pantheon, the Greek pantheon, there's the Egyptian pantheon. Take your pick.
The biggest thing is not messing with free will. That's a big part in everything. People need to be able to make their own decisions. You should not be doing any kind of casting or spell work that is going to make them do something that they may not necessarily want to do. And if you're going to do a spell for somebody, you know, for luck or health or money, ask them for their blessing and for their permission before you just go and do some spell and magic on them. It's common courtesy.
And I mean, you know, what Natalie said is spot on. Some people consider that, you know, love spells are actually some of the darkest forms of magic. If you were doing a love spell on somebody else to make them fall in love with your client, you're actually affecting that person's free will. Now, that's quite dark stuff. So even though on the surface it might actually look quite, you know, sweet and fluffy, it's a love spell. Yeah, not really, because you're affecting somebody's own free
spells,
choice.
If you're binding somebody to something, yeah, same thing.
Well, this has been a good discussion. You guys have, you know, told me a lot of stuff that I've never, you know, like I said, I've turned my mind around, and if I said anything that offended anybody tonight, it was just a joke. Like I just, because I was, like I said at the beginning of the show, like I was raised Christian. You know, witches were evil, witches were bad, and a lot of people do have that thought process, and I think really conversations like this are great because, you know, y'all said pretty normal stuff. You know what I mean? It's not any of that.
There's no smoke coming from our fingertips or lightning bolts.
Which I'm kind of disappointed. I want stone daggers and wrist slashes and any of that.
The dagger, the athame, that's sitting on the altar. I mean, those do exist there.
You can cut your cakes with it.
Naked coven at the end. So I was, you know, that thumbs up for that, because that's always a perception too that I've had, is, you know, that we're all running around naked in the forest and whatever. So, but that's
are.
And I know that, like, if people have questions and they want to reach out to me, and I'm sure Cleo's the same way, you know, feel free to send us a message, send us a friend request. We're more than happy to.
Also
I know
going to just quickly answer Angie's question. She said the thoughts on the personal gain rule. I don't have a rule against personal gain. If you're a witch and you've learned your stuff, there's no reason why you can't use your magic to benefit yourself in addition to others. If you're going to practice the craft, you need to have time and money available for you to do that ordinarily. And it's very difficult to be a skint witch, and therefore go ahead. Why not benefit yourself? The more comfortable you can make your own life, the more free mental energy, emotional energy, time that you have to devote to helping other people. So there's no I know people consider, coin and crotch, kind of low forms of magic. It's not, it's just another form of magic. Absolutely benefit yourself.
And you can
Go
create
for
your
it.
own rituals too. Like you don't have to use the same traditional ones in the
God.
book that you find. Like create them to your own, call upon them however you feel that you need to. You can finish it out with, by the power of 3, as I will it, so mote it be. That's a very common one to end up using. But it's things like that. They don't have to be the same as everybody. Each one can be different. It can be tailored to your own personal style and belief.
Definitely. Yes, please do write your own rituals. In fact, anything that you write will be better than anything that you find in a book, regardless of whether or not it's quite so pretty or
And
elegant or
like
has
your own recipes too.
Yeah, totally. And write your own words, and it doesn't matter, they don't have to rhyme either. Do it your way. It's your craft, and it's
No
about
haikus.
what works for you. That's cool. Haiku magic, I love that. Ooh,
Right.
you've inspired me.
Like I said, I think we should wrap this up, but like what you two ladies just said here in the end, that like if anybody truly has questions or truly needs mentorship or something like that, contact us through the foundation, because obviously we have people in here that know what they're talking about. So
and Angie's in New Zealand.
Don't send me a private message, because I will not be able to answer your question, and you will get one of these two ladies. You will get their info, because I'm not the one to ask that stuff. But I did, like I said, being with my Christian background, this and that and the other thing, I did buy Buckland's book. I think that's the author, correct? The Book of Witchcraft, or the
Buckland, Bucky's Big Blue Book.
Yes, I did buy that, because it's even if it's not my thing, I still need to educate myself on it. And tonight I learned a lot tonight.
It's a good book. It's a good.
I make jokes and things like that, but I definitely, tonight was educational, for me, and probably a lot of other people too. And I hope people watch the rewatch, watch the recording. So.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I know for me, you can reach me personally. We've also got our coven, which is Covenstead. And then they also have the other 2 branches, which is the Raven's Nest and Witch's Haven. And we have groups that are just for the females. We have like a support group also, like for the males. But it's open for everybody from all different walks of life. And we do things together as a group. We do things virtually. So a lot of questions can get answered that way too.
Cleo, how can people reach you?
You can either reach out to me directly on Facebook. My Facebook name is Cleo Tibbets Williams, unsurprisingly. So please feel free to message me direct on there. Alternatively, you can reach me at Haunted New Zealand. So look up Haunted New Zealand on Facebook, or via hauntednz.com. Yes. And our Wheel of the Year isn't the same as the Northern Hemisphere, because our seasons are reversed, but it's not so simple as rotating it 6 months, unfortunately. So that's a whole other conversation for another day. It complicates things being in the Southern Hemisphere quite a lot.
Yeah, we got pounded with snow today. Oh
really? I'm going to get in the swimming pool in a second.
Oh,
it's
my
hot
God.
out.
Don't even say that.
Let me show you summer.
That's not nice. Oh, geez.
So pretty.
Yeah, we got
blue
that
sky, but it's overexposing.
we got that wet, heavy snow. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you guys for joining. And we will definitely revisit this topic, because I don't think we're done. So, and I think we're going to do this topic on Patreon as well sometime very soon. And hopefully we can get more people in. But we'll chat about that. And we'll let everybody else know about that. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
See you guys.
This is that awkward thing where you hit the